Uche, Chidi, and Nene, welcome to Investments for Impact. We are very, very glad to have you join us for this episode of the podcast.
Thank you so much, Moses, for having me. I'm very excited to be on this podcast with you and also looking forward to the outcomes of the podcast and how we can collaborate in future. So going into the question, my name is Uche Chidianene. I'm the Managing Director, CEO of the Africa Medical Supplies Platform, and I lead the strategic direction and operational execution of our mission, which is focused on procurement and distribution of essential medical supplies. My role involves engaging governments, international organizations, both non-profit and for-profit, the private sector as well. So we ensure that the continent has access to critical healthcare products. And one of the things that I'll be sharing today is how AMSP is now pivoting from just being a critical response platform for COVID to more of a one-stop shop for medical commodities on the continent. So we will no longer be taking unawares when it comes to medical emergencies. So at the AMSP, I wear multiple hats. I lead on as an implementing AMSP is an implementing partner on the Saving Lives and Livelihood Initiative, where I'm also on the AMSP side, the project coordinator and director. AMSP's focus for the mandate for AMSP is mainly around ensuring access to vaccine ancillaries and PPEs that enable the successful vaccinations of the population on the continent. So before I joined the AMSP, I have done a lot of things. But if you look very well into my background, you see that the work I've done surrounds managing people. I'm a people person. I have skills around human resource management. I did that before I came to the AMSP. So I kind of have like a trajectory. I started my career in Jumia e-commerce as a customer service representative. And I grew to become a quality assessor where I access calls and also trainer. And I became a company-wide trainer for customer service representatives, as well as training employees on processes and tools to be used while engaging customers within the organization. So also within my role as a QA, I happened to recruit for the customer service department, as my role also envisioned knowing what to look out for the kind of people that are right for the organization. So that tended into a lot of scope that had to do with HR, recruitment, training. That's basically learning and development. So I began to gain more interest, and I furthered my academia. I'm a chartered member of the Institute of Personnel Management. I'm also a licensed HR professional. And since then, I think it was my work at Jumia that brought me to the Africa Medical Supplies platform, because the AMSP is a digital marketplace, so most of the people that were on the forefront for setting up Jumia then are also linked to the setup of the digital marketplace, which is now AMSP. So we came together to do the work, and I led as head of country engagement, client services, before I became the CEO of the AMSP. So if you look at most of my skills, you see they have to do with engagement with people. My BSc background comes from international relations, and I would say that for the 4 years that I've been on working on the platform, I've been able to live out my dreams. So I'm very excited about the work I do at the African Medical Supplies platform. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Uche. So I was really wondering how you, with your human resource background, ended up in the African Medical Supplies platform. So it does make sense that, given your background working in Jumia and AMSP being a digital platform, it would need the kind of experience you had. So before we go further, I just wanted you to tell us about AMSP as an organization, because AMSP is relatively new, and I thought perhaps you could just share a bit of the history of AMSP. Why was AMSP formed, and what was the goal behind setting it up?
Thank you so much for that question, Moses. So, the African Medical Supplies platform was set up as an immediate and integral response to the COVID-19 pandemic. The AMSP, at the time when COVID came to the continent, most of the other countries of the world were already experiencing COVID. They were already responding to the threat that had arrived on their own countries and borders. For us on the continent, we arrived on the scene very late. So most of the big countries were already accessing medical commodities. And we didn't have a platform of our own. We struggled. A lot of countries struggled to access products. And even if there was access, they were coming at exorbitant prices. So the African Medical Supplies platform needed to be set up, and it was set up by the then AU chairperson, President Cyril Ramaphosa, under the leadership of Mr. Strive Masiyiwa, who is the special envoy, the AU special envoy on COVID. He was then, yes, so, but his activities have now slowed down a bit. Um, However, the AMSP was set up in collaboration with various partners, including the AU, the Africa CDC, the Afrexim Bank, the UN ECHA, and those make up the principles of the African Medical Supplies platform. Now that we've been successful with combating COVID, we are now focusing on becoming a one-stop shop for medical commodities on the continent. And the aim of this is just to ensure that if there are any pandemics of any sort, we would not be in the same situation we were when COVID started. So the aim of the platform is basically to ensure equitable access to medical commodities at the right price directly from the manufacturers. So if you look at how the platform is set up, it's set up in a way that is closed. It's a closed marketplace. It doesn't allow easy access to maybe private sector individuals who are looking to make profits. So you have to be a vetted buyer and a vetted manufacturer to be listed on the platform. And for manufacturers, we ensure that they have the right certification, that they're well grounded in the work they're doing. They have the quality certifications, they have the regulatory approvals, and they're able to work within the jurisdiction where they're needed. So these criteria is what we look out for when we are listing manufacturers on the platform. So I hope I was able to clarify that question extensively. However, I'm open to sub questions if there are any.
Thank you, Uche. That was indeed a comprehensive answer. So, this season of the podcast is in the run up to the Transforming African MedTech Conference, which is an effort by Vilgro to understand the African MedTech ecosystem. We're trying to bring together the key actors on the continent in the medtech space. We're trying to understand what resources exist and see how we can build bridges and create opportunities for African MedTech. And in line with that, you said something about AMSP that I found very interesting. That it's a digital marketplace, and so in regard to that, I would like you to tell us a bit about uh, the appetite that governments have to purchase from a digital platform. If you could just unpack that a bit for us, because traditionally government buys through public procurement processes. So could you please just unpack that for us? Thank you.
Yes, there are constraints, especially given that the AMSP is a digital marketplace, is not what countries are used to. However, during COVID, we saw that we were able to get integrated into the procurement system of some of the countries. However, some countries did have their COVID task force and probably various workshops or work streams that were set up to tackle COVID that were empowered to do direct procurement outside of their usual procurement systems. So we also had the support from the AU and the Africa CDC that was able to, give the countries the buy-in to support the AMSP. So during COVID, there was a lot of traction in terms of procurements, buying PPEs, buying diagnostic kits, vaccines, and vaccine ancillaries. However, as we are pivoting to um, becoming a one-stop shop for medical commodities. We've seen a wane. However, there's a lot of push on our side. We're still getting support from the African CDC and the African Union. It's important to note that the African CDC has become an autonomous organization, and we've also been adopted by the Africa CDC as its pool procurement mechanism. So these are areas where we are pushing just to ensure that we become entrenched into the systems that are the care systems that are already entrenched on the continent. So countries still struggle with accessing the digital platform. However, we, on the other hand, have areas where we provide support just to ensure that they're able to come on the platform, place their orders, and wait for the whole supply chain to be completed and they receive the items that they want. Also, the areas we have issues around the bid and tender processes. Reason is because we already operate a very transparent model. The prices are listed on the platform, and once you have access, we have all the 55 AU member states registered as buyers on the platform. So they have access to viewing this pricing. It's quite transparent. So usually we do not engage in bid and tender processes because our products are already listed on the platform, and most times, depending on the volume of the procurement, the prices can come way down as well. So there's a whole lot that we are doing in terms of advocacy just to ensure that countries are getting used to the idea of the platform being here. We've seen successful procurement from countries like after COVID. During COVID, we had all the platform procuring, all the countries procuring. After COVID, we've seen continuous procurements through our various partnerships. We've had partnerships with Novartis. They're bringing a zero profit pricing catalog platform, and we've been able to support countries like Liberia, Haiti, Rwanda, Sierra Leone, amongst others, to um, support the areas where they need through the Novartis catalog. On the other hand, we also have various procurement mechanisms that we engage on. We also focus on giving value you know. So we partner with donor organizations to give a price drop on the platform, thereby encouraging usage. So, for example, if you have a product that is $2 in the regular market, or at the manufacturer's site, you go to them. Let me use Novartis for example. Probably they have Coatem for $2, and you go and they say, oh, it's $2. But if you buy at the AMSP, you get it for $1.50. So most of these donors, they subsidize products. We've had some partnerships with the Gates Foundation as well as the Global Fund. And also, we're looking at more of this to come on the platform. So it gives countries the encouragement to utilize the platform. So, and these are areas where we're trying to extend the reach and increase the support we are getting from member states.
Thank you, Uche. I really must say I like the approach that you're taking in terms of moving government away from traditional tendering processes to buying from an open platform that's accessible to everyone and where prices are listed. I think that is really promising in terms of avoiding some of the problems that we know are associated with tendering processes. And it sounds to me like you have really learned a lot of lessons during the last few years as you are distributing vaccine during COVID. So moving away from vaccines and towards medical devices, I think the first question I have for you is what are the avenues, given your experience, that MedTech companies could take advantage of to access markets, and how do this differ from other products in terms of requirements and also in terms of the kind of opportunities and challenges that they could face?
So, nothing much has changed in terms of the offerings that we have on the platform. For example, we are very open to African innovators on the platform. In fact, a first right of refusal is given to African innovators on the platform. And on the landing page of the website, you will see Made in Africa products. So we give you the first opportunity to view all the products that are listed by African manufacturers. Also, for various initiatives that we engage in, we do not source outside the continent. We focus on African innovators. And we have very beautiful manufacturers who even are on the WHO PQQ list. This is amazing. And it's rare to find, but when we find them, we leverage them, and we also preach their gospel as per tell everyone that has to know that we have amazing innovators on the continent. In terms of offerings that have been available, Afrexim Bank, we've partnered with Afrexim Bank, and Afrexim Bank have overdraft facilities for African innovators who are manufacturing on the continent and need support financially. And there are also various conversations that are ongoing to make accessible more funds to African innovators. Africa CDC is also working on various initiatives to ensure manufacturing of medical commodities on the continent. One of that initiative is PAVM, and they are going to ensure that these African manufacturers they will generate the demand, ensure countries are committed to procuring from those African innovators. So it's and AMSP is also on the forefront for that. We are the pool procurement mechanism that we utilize. So it's we are very open and flexible. We welcome with open arms all African innovators, especially those who are on the WHO PQQ list, who have the right certifications and are doing everything to ensure that they get their regulatory approvals in place So there's also funding that is available through Afrexim Bank. And in cases where more funds are required, we're able to come to the table and discuss and find possible synergies where they lie. So there's a whole lot that is available to African innovators on the platform. The problem is finding them and also getting them to know that these opportunities exist for them and whatnot. Sometimes we also find that they are constrained by funding. Afrexim is flexible, very, very flexible to support. So um, we encourage African suppliers and manufacturers on the continent. And like I said, there's a first right of refusal. In fact, for the past 2 years, for major of our products and major of our supplies, we have focused mostly on African innovators.
Thank you, Uche. I really appreciate that, particularly coming from Vilgro, which is an organization that is supporting African innovators to um, help solve African problems. One of the main challenges that we find is access to market. So I'm quite happy to hear that the African Medical Supplies platform is quite keen on creating room for African innovators. Now, my next question has to do with governments. So, government is one of your target markets, but then government is also the regulator for medical devices and commodities. So, in terms of helping innovators to address regulatory barriers, from where you sit, what kind of role do you think government can play?
I think the biggest challenge for a lot of manufacturers on the continent are with the regulators, being that manufacturers have to get regulated in all the 55 AU member states. It's cumbersome. Not only is it cumbersome, it's quite expensive. So, and it's time consuming. For countries like South Africa, where SAPRA is very strict, it takes quite a while. You submit a sample, it may take a year, 2 years before they get back to you. So it's very tough looking at all these issues. Um, what we say and we plead, we are constantly advocating with the governments for waivers, especially for products that are required to address immediate issues. We request waivers, emergency use authorizations. We also advocate at the AU level because when the countries or the heads of states sit together at their AU meetings and summits, um, these issues are discussed. And most times, when the president agrees and says, oh, we waive all this, let's waive this, waive that, waive that, we have a lot of support. So most times, the advocacy comes directly from the AU level. That you get more impact. When we advocate at that level, the impact is felt. But dealing with the government on a one-on-one basis is also tough because you have to go around 55 AU member states. So I'll always encourage most manufacturers to have a relationship with Africa CDC. Um, Once they see your product, identify that it's good, it has the quality it needs, they would be on the forefront for advocating for you in terms of getting the support across the continent. So the Africa CDC has been playing a pivotal role in that regard, and there is also the African Medical Agency (AMA) that they've been pushing to ensure a harmonized regulatory agency across the continent. And we are also keeping abreast with the developments that are going on, and also ensuring that we inform the manufacturers, on what steps need to be taken once AMA becomes fully operational. We know it has taken years, but we're still looking forward and hopeful that very soon um, AMA would become fully operational and then manufacturers can access this. And we also advocating at the AU level to imbibe AMA once it becomes, operational. Because it's one thing to have AMA, it's one thing for the countries to say, oh no, we don't recognize AMA here, because it's very obtainable. Countries can say, oh, NAFDAC is eight. If not NAFDAC, there's nothing else. But then the advocacy at the AU level, at the Africa CDC level, is very pivotal. So that's one of the areas I would encourage manufacturers. We always encourage them to keep abreast, to have these key partnerships, and to always focalize the benefits of the product that they have to offer. Value proposition is one of the key things that will push your product to the forefront.
Thanks, Uche. I really like what I'm hearing, particularly that there's an advocacy effort to harmonize the regulatory environment across the continent so that beyond waivers for emergencies like COVID, we have we're thinking of the long term and are able to address those regulatory barriers across the board. Now, moving on to the private sector. So, what kind of role is AMSP playing where private sector is concerned, and how to what extent have you been able to distribute through the private sector?
Okay, thank you very much. The AMSP, although a closed marketplace, is open to all the sectors, open to the NGOs, open to governments, and as well the private sector. However, for the private sector, there are some limits, and the pricing that is available to the governments and NGOs may not come to the private sector at the same, because we know that the private sector, most times their aim is to make a profit. But sometimes there are cases where we see that some governments have preference for procuring through some private sector channels. And we are able to sit down and look through the procurement channel, understand where the end user is going to come in, who's the end user, where the product's going to, before we make a decision on how the procurement will run. So we're very, well, I say critical, because we're very careful not to open up and give um, freebies, if I say, to people who are aimed to make profits. So there's a price cap or price hierarchy on the platform. Once products are for governments and NGOs, and we are sure it's not for profit, most times they get the best of the best pricing. But then the private sector is also able to access the best pricing. However, we always review who the end user is. We've seen a lot of cases where the end user is the government. So we also give them a leeway to procure as well. But there are cases where there was no leeway at all. For example, accessing vaccines via the African Vaccine Acquisition Trust. That category was not open to the private sector at all. And being that it was the procurement for vaccines is a very sensitive environment, so we do not open up there was no leeway. We didn't even get an approval at the principal level to open up to the private sector on that. So for the private sector, they are allowed to procure on the platform. However, we review to ensure fairness across all parties because, the AMSP is a social enterprise, and we're also focusing on being self sustainable and also ensuring that there is access and equitable distribution. So, for the private sector, the extent to which we've been able to support them has been very phenomenal in the sense that we've um, been able to support at least 50% of the private sector individuals that are on the continent, especially in the case of pool procurement. Most of the private sector individuals do not have the required numbers to meet the MOQ requirements. So, one of the key things that we offer is pool procurement mechanism, which AMSP acts as the aggregator and is able to now equitably distribute among private sector channels. So we do our best, especially in terms of verification of who the end user is, and then sometimes if we look at your organization and your trajectory at the KYC documentation, and we are not very clear with where that organization is coming from, we do not allow you to even get listed on the platform as a buyer. So it's very we're very strict and we're also very flexible. So that's it.
I like that. You're strict, but you're also flexible and are focused on impact. That's the end user who will eventually use the products. So now, if you could tell us the kind of about, sorry, let me take that again. Um, I'm curious to find out from your work so far, what kind of advice would you give to medtech entrepreneurs as far as the kind of signals that you are receiving from the market? And here, what I'd like you to do is to speak a bit to demand. From your work so far, are you able to give an indication of the kind of demand for medical technologies that there is to 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 support entrepreneurs to know what kind of products they need to develop?
Yes, we are able to provide that support in terms of we also partner in various organizations to provide forecasting and quantification on the platform. And so we are able to also aggregate countries' yearly needs and advise manufacturers on what products that are readily, in demand. Also, in terms of advising African innovators, especially those under MedTech, one of the areas I would say that we've seen issues is their ability to scale. Number one, ability to scale in terms of meet demand for volumes. Most innovators are unable to do that. Secondly, there's also the issue of um, being certified. I think that is even the primary issue because in terms of volumes, we can take whatever you manufacture. Um, However, the biggest issue is ensuring that you have the right certification, the basic certification, you're manufacturing in the right environment, right conditions, and you are able to get your documentation in terms of your certification because this will limit you from getting um, procurements for various projects. There are projects that are quite stringent that require a certain level of quality certification. And in the absence of that, there's absolutely nothing that can be done. For example, during COVID, we had organizations, especially in West Africa, that were manufacturing masks and also IPC materials. However, we couldn't list them because they didn't have the basic certifications. Even the littlest of quality certifications were unavailable. So it's sad when you see con- uh, manufacturers do even better than what you see outside of the country, but they don't get their certifications in the right check. They don't check that button because how do you encourage international procurement? How do you encourage people to buy from you, especially the big donor organizations, the big governmental organizations, regional organizations like WAHUAS was asking to ensure that we procure within the region. And it was tough to find manufacturers who are actually certified at least. So it's those would be the major and the primary advice I would have for African innovators. Secondly, I will also ask them to get into strategic partnerships. One of the key things that has really helped AMSP is still a very young organization. One thing that has been pivotal to our growth is strategic partnerships. So it's essential for African innovators to partner with the right organizations, ensure that their value proposition is top notch. And when you partner with big organizations that are able to see the value that you have, they will be the one to preach the gospel for you, not you yourself. So it's important that innovators look into these key areas. Thank you.
Thank, thank you very much. As we draw towards a close, just picking on what you've been talking about, are there any certain specific certifications that these entrepreneurs need to be able to list on your platform?
I think first of all, the key one is to be certified by the country where you are domiciled. For example, if you're a manufacturer in South Africa, you have to have SAPRA or I don't know what the other ones are. My colleagues in the supply team can speak more to that. But each country has its unique certification. Like in Europe, we see the CEs. Um, the US has the US FDA. Ghana has the Ghana FDA. Kenya has the Kenya Poisons Board. And they're quite strict. So for Kenya, if you've gone through and you are certified by the Kenya Poisons Board, we already know that you've done your due diligence, at least for the Kenya Poisons Board, they are very extremely strict, as well as SAPRA. We know that you've gone through the first level of certifications. Then also ensure to have one of the ISO certifications because they speak to your quality of your products. They also speak to the fact that you are manufacturing the right environment and conditions. Also, there's WHO PQQ list. I know it's quite expensive to be listed, but it's one of the key things that push manufacturers out there. We have an organization out of Kenya that have about 9 of their products on the WHO PQQ list. And they are usually the go-to because when you have projects that are very stringent on quality, on certifications, these organizations will come top of mind because they've done their due diligence and they have gone through the right processes that will propel them on the forefront.
Thank you for that. So, for my final question, I'm curious to find out if you have any um, stories that you could share of uh, African made products that have made it through your platform and have created great impact for um, people in Africa.
Thank you so much for that question. Yes, we do have amazing stories. For example, we have Revital in Kenya. Revital is an amazing organization. They are on the WHO PQQ list, nine of their products. I talked about them earlier. And they've been able to support countries by being on the platform with vaccine ancillaries. So during COVID, in fact, they couldn't meet a lot of the demand for syringes because organizations like UNICEF, AMSP, um, Wambo had booked them down, just to ensure that syringes are available for vaccination. And if you recall that there were a unique type of syringes that needed to be used for COVID vaccines, and this organization had it available. And I must say they have very unique products. For example, there's also the Vayu CPAP. That is a very amazing, unique product that I always talk about. This product provides oxygen to neonatals and it does not require electricity. It blows my mind. You know, especially for the rural areas in Africa, and a lot of organizations have been able to access this product, and we cannot stop talking about how it has helped, especially in war-torn areas like Burundi, Burkina Faso, and many others. It's been an amazing product that has been sourced via the platform, and we cannot continue to commend Revital enough for that innovation. It took into cognizance the fact that electricity is a big challenge on the continent, and they produced this product with that in mind, and it has been able to rescue a lot of the neonatals because even the regular oxygen devices that we have are not able to effectively blend the oxygen for the newborns, so they come in a bit harsh. But this product does an amazing job with blending, and provides access even in the small babies can be moved with the Vayu CPAP in a small tuk-tuk because it doesn't really require you to have any machinery of any sort. It's really an amazing product, and I cannot stop preaching the gospel. Like I said, if the value proposition of your products speaks for itself, you have organizations speak for you when you're not even there, where it matters most. So those are one of the beautiful stories that we have about African innovators. We also have in Egypt MAPI. They've also been able to support us with PPEs and vaccine ancillaries, and it's been amazing working with them. We just hope to have more innovators on the continent where we don't have to source outside the continent. It also makes procurement easier and faster, and creates more availability and access for us within the continent. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Uche. I am familiar with Revital because we've worked with them as Vilgro and also with the Bubble CPAP, and I'm quite happy to hear that they're listed on your platform and that you can see they're creating impact. So I guess with that we can conclude our discussion for today. I'm really glad that we were able to catch up, and I'm very happy to hear that there is enough demand on the continent, and that there are examples of locally made products that are being distributed on your platform and that are already creating impact in the African marketplace. So thank you very much for your time, and kudos for all the great work that you're doing. We wish you all the best, and we look forward to working with you more closely in the coming days.
Thank you so much, Moses. It's been a pleasure being here and speaking with you. I really enjoyed my time here. Thank you so much for the platform, and kudos on the work you're doing. Thank you.